learning how to outsource and trust that I'm give away a little bit of that control, because we are all control freaks, and you realize that no one's going to treat our business the way that we do. But I
Right.
learned that if I can get someone to do 80% of the job, that's good enough, because there is a point of diminishing returns for trying to get something from 0 to 80% versus 80 to 100%. And once I kind of understood that whole concept, then I started outsourcing. I started buying back my time because now I had the money to do it.
Hello and welcome to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. We're here to help you navigate life while disrupting the status quo. Our discussions cover a number of topics relevant to everyday life. We discuss everything from relationships to entrepreneurship. We also engage in some difficult but important conversations. And now, here are your hosts, Brian and Tanya Hamilton.
Welcome to another episode of the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. Today we're joined by, among other things, a fellow podcaster, Chris Myles. Chris, how are you today?
I'm doing okay. How are you guys? Thanks so much for having me on. This is going to be awesome. Looking forward to it.
Likewise, as are we. Now, Chris, we want to get a chance for everyone listening and everyone watching to get to know you. So we're going to start off by asking, who is Chris Myles?
Oh man, that's a deep question. All right, 'Cause I'm not really anybody, to be honest. But yeah, so I'm just a dad and a blogger, for the most part, who wanted to start an online business so I could stay home with the family, spend more time with them, especially when my son was born. I was working a ton, 12, 15 hours a day, being gone in an office, with no windows and hadn't even know what if it was light outside or yet. And I remember there were tons of times I'd leave the office and it's like pitch black outside. I'm like, oh, I lost track of time. But I got tired of those days for the most part. And I mean, there was one specific time when my son had just said his first word, or not really first word, it was one of his first words. And I remember thinking, like, when I first heard him after I had been to work all day long, and he said it, and I was so excited. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. He's doing it. He said something, and I ran to my wife and then had him say it in front of her. And she basically said, oh, yeah, that's nice. He's been saying that for like a week now. And I was like, oh, and I realized that I had been missing, his first stuff, So at that point, I was like, okay, I need to double down on what I was doing. I had started blogging around 2015. And at this point, I was like, okay, I need to figure this thing out. And I just started really going full force with it. And it wasn't easy. I was able to have my wife quit her job in about 18 months. About 2 years later, I was able to quit mine. And I was able to figure it out. And that's kind of where we are right now.
Wow. So the blogging, right? I go online, I Google, I search up something, and then it's like articles or bloggers and all that kind of stuff. At the time, back when you started, did you feel like, where am I gonna make my place in this online world, or did you realize real quick that you had your own spot for that?
Yeah. So what I learned like very early on was the idea that blogging about what I ate for breakfast, and blogging about, what I did earlier that day, that type of blogging died in like 2010,
Yeah.
2009. So that's not the way that I learned blogging. I learned blogging by helping answer common specific questions about a particular topic. And so, for example, maybe guitars, right? Maybe how do you restring a guitar? I could write a blog post on how to restring a guitar with the hope that I might be able to rank on first page of Google, and then people will find it. Because when you go to Google, you're asking questions. Google is always like, what is this? How do you do this? Or yada, yada, yada. So if you can create content that serves that purpose, or what we call in the industry, the search intent of that particular phrase, you can create the content and hopefully get some traffic to your site, at which point you can then monetize it from there in a number of ways.
Okay. So have you found over the years that the videos take a little bit more of the forefront? And the reason why I ask is because if I'm searching up something, it will come up like the images on Google, the video, or, the articles, right? And I usually tend to pick up the videos because I'm like, this is something I can listen to while I'm attempting, right? What do you think about that?
Yeah, and that's normal. That's natural. Video is very you think about it, when you read something, you're only just really just using, visual. But when you are watching a video, you're using the sense of, you're seeing it, you're hearing it, so it's multimedia, right? You're listening and getting more of it. But there's always, in my opinion, there's going to always be a contingent of people who rather just read it, which is why there's still newspapers around, even though it's a old dying industry. There's still newspapers that are online, because people are going to go around looking for information on different types of topics. So even though when you Google something and you might see videos and you might see a podcast or something like that, if you scroll a little bit further down, you're going to see the text results, right? You're going to see those results. They're still there because it still works. And until that stops working, I'm going to take advantage of it as much as I can.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. No, I want to kind of circle back, Chris, to when you first started. So if my research serves me correctly, it was around the time that Benji was born. Your wife essentially decided that she was going to be retiring at that point. So
Yeah. So like in 2015, I kind of stumbled across this whole affiliate marketing blogging industry, and I didn't take it too seriously. I've always been the type that had some type of secondary income coming in, but not really anything serious, really not to the point to where it justified the amount of time and effort that I was putting into it. So I had, a few things. I moonlit as a DJ. I would buy and sell clothes on eBay, buy and sell computers, trying to flip those, yada yada, but none of it really made a ton of money. So I stumbled across it. I tried to do a couple of things with blogging, and I think I took the same route most people do when they try to make money online with something. And you tried it, you realized it was going to take a little bit more work than you expected, and then you probably just, I don't want to do this anymore. So I went with, I ended up giving up on it and trying a few other things. But then when we found out that we were pregnant in like spring of 2016, then that's when everything changed, because my wife kind of sat me down and said, I want to stay home with our son. His name's Benji. And I was like, well, we can't afford that. Like not at all. Maybe you can switch to part-time, but that's the best we can do. And she sat me down and looked me dead in my eye and said, Chris, you need to figure this out. So I was like, oh man, okay. So I had to, I went online. I did what most people do. I kind of Googled how to make money online, and that's a cesspool of things right there. I tried a few things, but again, it wasn't worth the time and effort. And then I came back to blogging and affiliate marketing. And I remember probably listening to like a podcast or a YouTube video or something of someone who basically all he did was blog. So he would just blog. He'd wake up in the morning, take care of his kids, make sure they got off to school while his wife was able to sleep late. And then once she finally woke up, they did some stuff around the house. They go to the grocery store at like 10:30 in the morning when there's nobody there, which is the greatest time to go to the grocery store, by the way. And then, just doing that kind of thing. And I was like, that's what I want to do. That's the life that I want to lead right there. Right. So I started kind of following him and then following others. And that was 2016. By about maybe early 2018, mid 2018, I was making enough money for her to quit. And then a few months after that, I went ahead and quit. And man, it was interesting, and it was kind of scary because I've always had a job since I was like 16 years old. And it was weird to, give up that consistency, and kind of the safety net, when you really look at it in terms of every 2 weeks I'm going to get paid, no matter how well or bad I perform on the job. I'm still going to get paid that same amount of money. But now I look back at it and think, what, if I could just work until my son went to school, it's kind of what the guide was. And by the time he went to school, I kind of reached that goal. And at one point it was a year. I'm like, okay, let's try 2 years. And we tried 2 years, and now it's been 4 years, and he's in kindergarten right now, and we're still going strong, So that was the story behind it all. But I think the big thing there was the motivation was different than what it was in 2015, and having a different motivation because I had my back against the wall. I had, the family, the wife depending on me to try to figure this kind of thing out. And that is what kind of, compelled me to be able to figure this stuff out.
Yeah, well, that's definitely going to be a strong motivator, especially when the conversation is, Chris, you're going to figure this out. That's definitely.
Yeah.
But okay, so some of the things that you mentioned there, blogging and affiliate marketing. So I know a lot of us have heard of affiliate marketing and have kind of a rough idea what it is.
Yeah.
Exactly what is affiliate marketing and how does it work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's because sometimes people will hear it and they might think one thing and it has nothing to do with that. And let me just, I like to use this example, right? So let's just say you have like a favorite pizza place. Like I have a favorite pizza place that's like literally right around the corner from my house. And I go there so often that people know me by name, basically. They already know what I want and all of that fun stuff. But imagine the owner comes out and say, hey, Chris, you come here all the time. You obviously love the pizza. If you tell, a few of your friends to come over, excuse me, a few of your friends to come over, every time they come over and buy some pizza, I'll give you $10. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So what I'll do is I'll go around and maybe tell some friends and tell some family, and maybe 4 or 5 people might go over there. So I get myself a nice little 40, $50, right? But then what if I found a way to get 100 people there, or 1,000 people, or 100,000 people, right? That $10 starts to add up pretty quickly. But that's basically what affiliate marketing is. You are partnering with brands and then referring their products, and then you get paid a commission if they go through and if the people you refer go through and make a commission, you're going to make a commission on the sale. So it's the best part about it, especially with blogging, is that it's very scalable. However, a lot of people online, they like to say, oh yeah, just do affiliate marketing and you're going to be sipping Mai Tais on the beach by next week, and that's not necessarily how it works. They like to pitch the idea that, oh yeah, you can do this and you can do that with affiliate marketing. But one thing that a lot of times that people leave out, which I notice all the time, is they don't tell people how to get the correct eyeballs on those products, right? So you can get, you might say, oh, if I make $10 every time I refer someone to this certain product, let me just post it online and then annoy all of my friends and family, constantly on Facebook, and like, you want me to click this so that you can get paid? No, I'm not doing that, kind of a thing. And that's not what you should be doing. So with blogging, that's a form of traffic generation, right? So if you can create content that is talking to the ideal person who would be interested in our example of pizza, then they're going to naturally probably thank you for the suggestion, especially if it's good pizza too, right? If it's a good product, that makes a huge difference. So if they go through with the purchase because, oh, and this is good pizza, they might buy it over and over again, at which point you can get a commission over and over again. And then by doing that, it's just getting in front of the right audience. And you do that by having a blog or a YouTube channel or like a podcast that we're on right now, is speaking to that audience and do what's called attraction marketing, where you're attracting people rather than having to go out and just hope that you can convince them to buy something, which is a lot harder to do.
And then, Chris, do you find that people need to have a huge audience in order to even just be able to do an affiliate marketing type of arrangement?
Actually, no, not at all. You don't need to have a large audience at all. In fact, in my blog, I probably was only getting a few hundred people to my site per month when I was making a decent, maybe a couple $100 a month with it. And the big reason for that is with affiliate marketing, you only need one person to go through the process in order for you to make money. So with that in mind, I don't need droves and droves of people, because if one person converts, and meaning they go through with the process, then I get paid. So if I can work that to 2 or 3%, which is usually a pretty good conversion rate online, meaning for every 100 people that find my site, 2 or 3 of them actually go there and purchase. And if I only got a couple hundred people, I'm getting 4 to 6 sales, pretty consistently. What if I had, instead of 200 people coming to my site, I got it to 10,000 or 50,000 or 100,000? All of a sudden, it starts to scale pretty well. And all you have to do now is just figure out how to get more traffic to your site. And that's typically by just blogging more.
And I think that's a good question, right? Because I think a lot of people, especially on Instagram or, social media, they think it's all about the followers, how many you have that you can, qualify to do this. And I think on Instagram, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it is sometimes more of that numbers game in regards to being, part of an affiliate program. But what do you think the difference is there? So on like Instagram per se, compared to the blogging, is it as easy to get into that?
Yeah, so I guess on Instagram, the whole idea there is, I think you're speaking more towards like sponsorships, right? Where you already have an established audience, and then you go to these brands and say, hey, I have 1 million people who follow me and will basically, buy whatever I sell. You think about maybe like the Kardashians, right? They have these huge followings. Then they show up and they talk about this slimming tea or this makeup here or something like that. And they get paid, millions of dollars just for the mention. Right. And it's still mind boggling in my opinion that can happen. But I think the internet is the greatest leveling factor ever. Right. And the big reason for that is because me and you can create an Instagram account. We can create a podcast. We can create and get our own audience and then promote stuff to them. There's an old saying out there. Well, not a saying. It's a maybe an old adage or whatever that Kevin Kelly said. It's called the 1,000 True Fans theory. And in that theory, he's saying that all you need to do is find a way to make $100 off of 1,000 people. And by doing that, you can make a six-figure income. And when you think about the billions, like with a B, the billions of people who are on YouTube, or the billions of people who use Google, or the billions of people who use TikTok or YouTube or whatever constantly, and you just need 1,000 of them to make a six-figure income, it all of a sudden doesn't seem as daunting, right? And if you found a way to get, $200 off of 1,000 people, you only need half that amount, right? You only need 500 people to do it that way. So the numbers and kind of start to work out in your favor, because it actually is relatively easy to get an audience just by creating consistent content. Even in the very beginning, when no one knows who you are, if you just keep churning, keep punching out new content all the time, people are going to eventually find you. And then which point those affiliate sales, those sponsorship deals, or whatever you're working on is going to start, working out in your favor because of that numbers game.
Okay. Excellent. And then in terms of actually finding these affiliate marketing deals, like what would you suggest as an approach to get started in that?
Yeah, so the number one thing is you need to define what's called your niche or your niche, depending on what part of the world you're coming from. But that's just a fancy way of just whatever topic you're going to be talking about. There's another, I'm full of phrases and whatever, but there's an old phrase out there that says that if you try to talk to everybody, you end up talking to nobody. And what you need to do is talk to one specific group of people. A niche can also be just a group of people that you're talking to. So think about back in your high school days, right? You had the cool kids, you had the gothic kids, you had the nerds. I was probably a nerd at the time. So you got all of those different groups or niches of people. So the nerds would probably be interested in computers, right? But the cool kids would be interested in designer clothes, but they may not be interested in the computers, right? So it may not work out completely, but then maybe black fingernail polish will be for the gothic kids or whatever. So once you can figure out what audience you'd like to talk to, then you promote products that they would be interested in. So if you like sewing, you can start talking about sewing on Instagram and posting things that you're working on, things that you're thinking about doing, a new fabric or this, that, and the other. You're going to naturally attract an audience that's interested in sewing, which means you can now promote different, Joanne Fabrics or something. You can go to their website, and Joanne Fabrics, like 90% of other companies in the world, has an affiliate program. All you need to do is go to their website, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and look for words such as affiliate program or partner program or something like that. And you can get paid a commission just by referring people to the site. And if they make a purchase right there, then you make money from it. So the first thing would be to get talk to a specific audience of people. And then the second thing is to talk to them about that particular niche. And then at that point, at 3, then you can now start promoting products that they would be interested in purchasing.
I was just going to say, so for these businesses, like really, when you look at it, this is such a great way for advertising for them. Obviously, This is why it's all started, but it's like, you're not paying for any, like at these businesses, Joanne Fabric, they're not paying for any advertising when it comes to this. They just have people signing up. Right. And it's like, you can't go wrong.
You're only paying out if somebody buys something.
Yeah.
Right. So you're nothing to lose for the business.
No. Well, affiliate marketing and it's one of the big reasons why I do enjoy it, is because you don't need to have your own product, right? You don't need to go out and, spend, months probably putting together something or having to buy a lot of product and store it somewhere. You don't have to do any of that because the business themselves did it. And in affiliate marketing, everybody, in my opinion, wins, right? So the customer gets what they're looking for. You, as kind of the middle man or middle person, end up making a commission based on the sale, and then the manufacturer is able to sell whatever it is that they're promoting. And it's even more, in my opinion, better for the manufacturer as well, because they don't have to pay you benefits to be a salesperson, right? The marketing dollars that they would normally spend to try to acquire a new customer, they can now give that to you as a commission for making the sale. So it ends up working for everybody in that particular situation. If I can add this, you do need to be careful though, because you don't want to just promote stuff just because you're going to make a lot of money on it. Sometimes you got to have some type of integrity there, because if you're promoting a bad product, then you're going to hear about it, right? Because that's going to kill your credibility. And if I go buy something that, somebody recommends and this doesn't help me, or it even, I lose money because of it or something like that, I'm not going to listen to you like ever again, right? So you want to be sure that you are, have a little bit of integrity, that if you are promoting a product, that hopefully you've at least used that product in the past. That way you can speak, knowledgeably about it and can sleep at night too, right? So that you can do that kind of thing. So that's one thing I definitely recommend when it comes to that. But regardless, you don't have to create your own product. You don't have to worry about customer service. If someone returns the product, they're not returning it to the affiliate marketer, they're returning it back to the manufacturer, and then they have to deal with the returns and customer service and stuff. So it's a great way to do it and not have to worry about coming out of pocket outside of just trying to grow your social following.
So when did you see like the affiliate marketing really start off? Like how long ago was that?
Yeah, so I started blogging in 2015, and I didn't take it seriously, to be honest. And as a result, I remember creating a website, and I kind of just, let's just say, borrow without asking a couple of articles from other websites. And I guess I got caught or something, because I ended up having my site completely taken off of Google. It was called de-indexed from Google, which means that if you tried to search for my site, you just weren't going to find it. So because of that, and I didn't know what I was doing at the time, for the record. It was just the first time that I had done it. I found some random guy on YouTube who I thought he knew what he was talking about. And what I realized was that what he was showing to how to do it was actually like years old. And is the game of blogging and affiliate marketing is like constantly on the change. So because of that, you can't just be using old tactics from even 2 or 3 years ago. You need to know what's working today so that you can continue growing your site. So because I wasn't following the right stuff, they ended up kind of delaying me, but I didn't give up. I did a couple years later, after, we found out that we were pregnant. I went ahead and actually invested in some training for myself to try to figure out how to do this correctly and the right way today. So once I was able to do that, then I started blogging, and it wasn't easy. I mean, at some times I was punching out, 2 articles a day, just trying to get as many articles out there on the site. I was always looking for the secret sauce. Like, okay, how do you do it this way? How do you just skip the, make it a little faster? What do I got to do here, do there? But because I had a good community around me, they were telling me there is no secret sauce. Just create the content. I was like, okay, all right, well, let's go ahead and do it. So I just put my nose down. I stopped watching Netflix. I stopped binge watching TV shows for a little while. And I used that time to figure out affiliate marketing and figure out blogging. So I just started just going at it really, really hard. And I made my first commission probably maybe about 8 weeks in. So about 2 months in, I finally made my first few dollars with it. And then within about maybe 3 to 4 months, I was making a few $100s with it. At about maybe 10 months, I was making about $1,000 a month with it. So it was like kind of a linear, progression at that point. When I hit about 12 months, I was probably making around 2,000 to 3,000. By about maybe 18 months, I had reached it skyrocketed at that point. It went up to around 15 to 20 at that point, 1,000 per month just with that. And it kind of hovered there, and then it kind of took a little dip, but it's been a little bit up and down ever since. And then at that point, I had it to where it was working pretty consistently. So then I had writers and people who were writing content for me. I turned around and started working on another side business at the time, because I had freed up the time to do that. So now I had 2 businesses going, but I had one just kind of churning along, and then I was trying to grow another one. So it probably took around, like I said, around 18 months to 2 years. And we were in a ton of debt at the time too, like a ridiculous amount of high interest credit card debt. And we had to get out of it like as fast as possible. But all we were doing was paying the minimum payments, because that's all we could afford at the time. And once we finally had the money, anytime it came in, I was just putting it as much on those interest credit cards as much as possible. And it's funny, once the payments had all been gone and we had finished paying off all of the credit cards, my credit score jumped up like 100 points overnight, which was crazy. Wow. And by doing so, now I had excellent credit, So a lot of cool things happened from it when I finally saw that I had a positive net worth. So I was like, okay, this is awesome. And that's kind of how it went. So it took 2 years. I'm not going to say that it was quick, But, I always tell people, well, what were you doing before? Your original plan might be, I'm going to work 30 years at this job and hope that I retire with enough money and health to be able to enjoy it, but I was able to quit my job doing, something that it was a learning curve. But once I got there, within 2 years, I was making enough money to where I can quit my job and now work on it, 2 to 4 hours a day. And then I can spend the rest of the time doing whatever I wanted.
Mm-hmm. So I have to ask one question. Were you into writing before all this?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. Actually, no, not really at all. But it's funny because in school, I liked math, but I wasn't that great at it. And I hated English, but I was actually better at English than I expected. But regardless, one thing that I have realized is that you don't need to be the greatest writer in the world in order to blog. You just have to be a little bit more helpful than the other person. Okay. So if we look at what Google wants, right? When you go to Google, you Google a question and hopefully you find the answer. And if you find the answer, great. If I say, how tall is Michael Jordan? The first thing that pops up is, okay, yeah, Michael Jordan was, I think he was 6'4" or something like that, right? So it pops up and now I got my answer. So me as a searcher, knowing that I used Google and got the right answer means that I might use Google again because it's going to be a positive reinforcement for me. And I'm going to use Google over and over and over again. Back in the day, you might remember these old search engines like Lycos or Ask Jeeves and all of those. They're not around anymore because Google just took over because they got so good at answering the question. So with that being said, if you create content that answers the question and gets it to the point to where a person searching for it has no more wants, right? You answer every specific question and angle about it, because if I'm saying, okay, how tall is Michael Jordan? My natural next question might be, well, what team did he play for? Or something like that. I might mention that in the article as well. So as long as I'm satisfying what's called the search intent of that particular phrase, then I can probably answer the question better than somebody that's already out there. So there's a trick with Google with being able to just look around at the results based on the question asked and look at the results. Are the results any good? Could they be better? If they could be better, you might be able to be a little bit more helpful in the content that you create. And over time, the cream rises to the top because you're going to be helping more people than the previous person. There's a little bit more involved with getting blogs to rank, but essentially that's what it is. And when you work in that framework of just being a little bit more helpful, you don't have to be the greatest writer. You just have to do a little bit more effort than the people who are already out there.
Okay.
Perfect. So I know there's a Michael Jordan fan listening or watching who's losing their mind right now. He's 6'6".
Just 6.
So don't bother correcting in the comments.
Wait, how tall was Kobe? Because I thought they were pretty close. Was he 6'8"?
I believe he was also 6'6".
Also 6'6". I thought that one was taller than the other, but maybe they were the same. Okay. Nice.
But yeah, it's funny. Now I want to kind of actually go back a little bit. And like you mentioned, this was a 2-year process for you to get to the point where you were comfortable walking away from your day job. And I just want you to go back to when you got that first payout from your affiliate marketing. What did that feel like? I know obviously it was a smaller amount and you were working towards where you are today, but what was it like to see that first initial result?
Oh man, it was life-changing because to be honest, when I kind of got started too, my whole idea was let's just make enough money to pay the cell phone bill. You know how much your life would change if I had an extra $100, especially when you're on a tight budget. Right. And that's where we were. Yeah, and I was just like, man, an extra $100 would be nice. And I remember I made that first commission was like maybe like $20. It wasn't even nothing ridiculous, but I was able to generate money from something that didn't exist 2 months ago, and that was like, wow, that's pretty interesting that I was able to create my own money, at which point I kind of looked at every job I ever had and just thought, I don't need you anymore. I can create I don't need your money. I can create my own money, and kind of when that realization happened, that's when I started doubling down a little bit more on it and a little bit more on it and putting more time and effort into it. And, it came with growing pains, but man, I was able to get that first initial like whiff of what entrepreneurship was with money. It wasn't a service-based business. Even though I was answering questions, I create the blog post and it exists now, and it's there for someone to find, whether it's 2 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon. And which means I have an opportunity to make money even when I'm sleeping, right? And that's really the best part about this, just creating, like, even with the podcast, right? You guys have the podcast, but someone can listen to you at any time. And because of that, that means a little piece of you continues to exist even if you're not even paying attention to it. So once that first, like, commissions came in, I realized that, okay, if I can do this once, if I can make $1, I can make $100. If I can make $100, I can make 1,000. If I can make 1,000, who knows what the limit is at that point. Trading time for money was no longer a thing for me at that time, and I kept working until it was a waste of time to go to work anymore. And I told my boss I was done, and I stepped out.
Now, and this is another thing I'm curious, because obviously you've been working on this in the background for a while. When you quit, was your boss expecting that?
No, his jaw dropped. He could not believe it. It's a pretty funny story, actually. So, man, you don't realize just how much power we give to employers when, in my opinion, especially now, as employees, we have more power than we think we do. And I think the pandemic kind of showed that a little bit as well, right? That even afterwards, when they're like, okay, time to come back to work, everybody was like, no, I'm going to go somewhere that lets me work from home. And I think employees started getting the power back. And now these employers are like giving out all these huge bonuses and stuff, trying to get people to come back to work because they need them at work, right? And I still don't understand why they need them at work. If they can get just as much work done at home, why have them come in? But regardless, it just depends. But what I finally realized was that I didn't need another business. I didn't need to figure this part out, figure that part out, just move on. And my boss was, hey, what is it that we can do for you to get you to stay? And I was like, nothing, because you have nothing to offer me. And I had a vacation I was supposed to be going on at the time, and we had already bought the plane tickets. We had the hotel ready to go and everything. The vacation had been approved. It had been, weeks before. And then literally like 2 weeks before, he's like, hey, we're going to have to cancel your vacation. We're doing what's called a go live, where they were acquiring another business and they needed all hands on deck. And I was like, well, no, I have the vacation. You're just going to have to figure it out. And he basically gave me an ultimatum right there. But because I was making so much money with the side business, I was like, okay, well, bye. Bye, Felicia, get out of here. And his jaw dropped. He's like, wait, what? He couldn't believe it. And I was like, no, I mean, you guys figure it out. Now I did go home and like talk it over with my wife first. I didn't just do it. But like the next day, I said, hey, I gotta talk to you for a minute. He was like, look, everything's great. I appreciate it, what you guys been doing, yada, yada, yada. But I can't do this anymore. I got to get out of here. And he's like, that's pretty much how he responded. He couldn't figure out what to say next. And he was like, okay, well, let me call you back. So then he called his higher ups, and then they called me back about an hour later and tried to get me to stay. And I was like, no. So then when I was leaving right before the go live that they were going to have too. Like, I'm not going to do this work. So they were like, well, can we keep you for an extra week and we'll pay you yada, yada. And I was like, no, I don't need to, because I'm making my own money with my business. So get out of here. So I ended up giving them my 2 weeks notice, and then I split. And I don't know. Now I look back at it, I'm like, man, that may have been a little irresponsible. But I mean, I had to do it. Okay. Well, okay, I had to leverage at that point, right? Mm-hmm. And I think businesses, especially employers, their whole job is to get you to do what you can for the least amount of money possible. And they're going to constantly take advantage of you, unless you're in one of those rare spots where you actually do have a job that cares for you. But I was working for one of these big 4 consulting firms, and they were, you're a number there. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, well, let me get out of here before they find a reason to get rid of me anyways. And this was right before the pandemic started, maybe 6-7 months before the pandemic started. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I was working at home before it was cool to work at home. and I was already used to it once it finally started. But at that point, it was like, okay, well, I guess this is it. And I remember the first 4 months of trying to work on my own, I didn't have a boss anymore. So I had a hard time like finding stuff to do without being like just super lazy. Once because I thought to myself, if I had 8 hours to work on this, versus the 15 I was working at, the regular job, then I should be able to double my production and double this and double that. But I had to learn how to set goals for the business and set things quarterly and say, okay, where do I want the business to be at this point and that point. I had to hire a mentor to really help me with that stuff. But once I got there, then I was able to finally get some consistency with the income with the business and keep going from there.
And I was going to ask, because I always love to hear, especially for people who, have worked a 9 to 5 and now doing their own thing. How do you schedule your day, I guess, to be successful, right? And the reason why I ask is because now, at the time it was you, your wife, the baby, and you want to get the work done, but you still want to spend time, you want to feel successful at the end of the day. So I think it's always good to hear from others, how do you make it work?
Yeah, so I learned it at the beginning of the week, or at least the night before, to plan what I want to do the next day, and kind of set like, what I guess you can call them like ICAs, or income producing or IPAs, income producing activities. So whatever I'm working on, is it busy work or is it actually going to produce revenue? And you have to do that constantly, because sometimes you can just find yourself doing something and you didn't move the needle at all in the business. And when I'm teaching, or not teaching, but when I'm coaching other people with trying to do this exact same thing, they'll sit there and like, man, I got to get this logo right, or the site doesn't look the way I want it, or yada, yada, yada. And I'll tell them, look, the site can be the ugliest site in the world, or it can be the greatest looking site in the world. But if nobody sees it, it doesn't matter, right? So the number one thing that you should do, especially with blogging, is to get more blog posts out there. So I would sit down and plan what I wanted to do for that day. And then most of the time, if you don't find a way to create content and throw it out there on the internet, learn to become a creator rather than just a consumer of content, then you probably wasted your day if you didn't create any new content. So creating content is always the number one thing that I'm trying to figure out, and then get out there and create a new blog post, create a new YouTube video, or whatever it happens to be, get it out there, and then move on to something else. Once I learned how to kind of prioritize those kinds of things, and everything else kind of fell in line. I also read The 4-Hour Workweek, which is Tim Ferriss. It's kind of an ideological book, for what exactly you're going to get with your business, but you do realize the importance of outsourcing and how important your time really is. So if there's this new, if I need to create a flyer or something, for my wife's business, we had to create a flyer recently, and yeah, I can sit down in Canva and maybe spend an hour and a half figuring it out, and it will probably come out and look decently well. Or I can go to Fiverr, pay a guy $7, and he does it in 10 minutes. So that's kind of the way that I started looking at it. One of the first things I did was hire someone to cut my lawn. And I remember thinking, now granted, if you like cutting your lawn, like if it's like a Zen-like experience for you, then I get that. If you just get out there and you just kind of just lose it, and that's fun for you, then by all means. But usually that's probably one of the first things you should start outsourcing, because instead of spending, it might take me by myself 3.5 hours to cut the yard, or I could pay a guy $30-$50 and he can do it in 20 minutes, So once I did that and realized that I can now spend that time either working more on the business, or maybe just hanging out, playing with Benji, hanging out with the wife, or us together completely. And, is that worth the $50 that you would have sitting there, and trying to, cut your own yard for 3.5 hours or whatever, because we have a decent sized yard. So it would have taken me forever to do it. So learning how to outsource and trust that I'm give away a little bit of that control, because we are all control freaks, and you realize that no one's going to treat our business the way that we do. Right. But I learned that if I can get someone to do 80% of the job, that's good enough, because there is a point of diminishing returns for trying to get something from 0 to 80% versus 80 to 100%. And once I kind of understood that whole concept, then I started outsourcing. I started buying back my time, because now I had the money to do it. So hopefully that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely. Now, if you were to go back to, if you're able to go in a time machine, go back a few years and speak to Chris when you're writing that first blog post,
yeah,
what's the advice that you would share with him?
Man, don't waste time trying to find the secret sauce. Just create the content. Everyone's always looking for the shortcut. They're always looking for, what can I do to get this to work faster? And typically with anything, throwing money at it will probably kind of shorten it a little bit. But if you're just solopreneur doing this all by yourself, you don't have much money to invest other than perhaps education, they just sit down and just do the work. I used to waste so much time binge watching on TV shows as well. I would I remember watching one show that was like 9 seasons. They had 20 episodes that are all an hour each. And you realize just how long a time that takes. And you realize if I took that exact same time and actually used it to build something that's going to end up paying me potentially for the rest of my life, then you realize, okay, maybe I'm just wasting time. Nowadays, I still binge watch TV shows now, but just for a little while I stopped and then refocused that time and energy. And by doing so, I'm able to, have fun with it now, where just had to give it up just for a little while to work on something that was bigger than me at the time.
Nice. Yeah. And it's funny, even with that, like for someone who watches a lot of TV, you can even find one thing that I used to do. I remember when I was studying for a specific designation, the only thing I really watch on TV is basketball games, but during the commercials, halftime, I would use that time to actually go through the content and study.
Nice.
So
yeah,
again, you can take advantage of those breaks in there. So at least it's not, you can still have some enjoyment. You don't have to give up the things you like in life, but you can still make the most of that time.
Who's your favorite team, B?
The Toronto Raptors.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just teasing. No, that's great, man. That's awesome. You guys, had a championship a few years ago, right?
Yeah, 2019.
Nice. Oh, you reeled that off pretty quick. Yeah,
I've got the banner right over there. That's why it's right on the wall.
Nice. That's awesome. But yeah, no, I totally understand. There's certain parts of what I do that I can actually do mindlessly. I'm more of an NFL guy, so if sitting there watching the game, I can actually have my laptop and I'm doing what's called keyword research, where I'm looking for new topics to write about, and I can do that without thinking about it. Once you do it enough, then it does start to become a little repetitive. But I can do it mindlessly. So I can do that while I'm watching a game, maybe while we're just sitting around talking, whatever. I have my laptop there. I can actually do a little bit of work so that I can send it off to my writers, and then they can write on it while I'm doing something else, Right. So that was a very smart thing to do, is, write it right in between, taking every second that you could, rather than just sitting there twiddling your thumbs. You were actually working towards something. And again, the goal orientation there, just having a goal, a North Star to go after, really does change everything. It can't just be, I'd like to make a few extra bucks, because once it starts to get hard, you're going to give up, because money is just a means to an end. It's what you're going to get with that money once you go through with it. And what I wanted to do was buy my freedom back, buy my time freedom back. And that was really awesome, for a big realization for me at the time as well.
Right now, since you mentioned the NFL, who's your team?
No, I'm actually okay. So I grew up in Louisiana, right? Southern Louisiana, from Baton Rouge. So my team till I was about 12 years old was the Saints, but they were the Aints back then, right? They were a pretty terrible NFL team. We used to go to the games with grocery bags on everyone's head with a little. That's just how bad they were, because I don't think they had a winning season until the 2000s, and they've been around since the 60s, right? Yeah. So that was pretty, in a terrible existence. But around 12 years old, I was fed up with it, and I was like, whatever. Now in the South, college football is huge, like really, really huge. So because of that, I would keep up with a lot of the SEC players that would go to the NFL. And I would keep up with a lot of the quarterbacks as well. And around that time is when Peyton Manning finally went to the NFL. So I started keeping up with Peyton, and then I became a Colts fan. And then after a while, I remember thinking, am I a Peyton Manning fan or am I a Colts fan? And then when he got hurt and he missed a couple of years, or however it went, I remember still, going for the Colts. I realized, you know what, I guess I'm a Colts fan. So and actually they played in a Super Bowl in 2009. I remember thinking, oh man, who do I go for? Because I felt like I don't want to be a bandwagon guy, because the Saints are good now. Oh yeah, now I want to be a Saints fan. So I stuck with my Colts, and I still have been to this day. So since I was 12, I made the switch from the Saints to the Colts. Some people, don't like that about me, but hey, it is what it is. At least the Mannings are from New Orleans, so that does help. So we'll just go from there.
Well, that's okay. The Saints are a division rival, so you're good with me. So this is where you can say sorry. I'm a Carolina Panthers fan.
Well, I mean, you didn't have quite a good game yesterday. Just that was a pretty heartbreaking loss right there.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think the thing I'm looking forward to as a fan is the draft. It's not this season for sure.
Yeah,
Try
no,
again
I
next
can.
year.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Tanya.
No, I just said try. They'll have to try again next year.
Yeah, I've been there, man. I have been there. Jake Delhomme, if you remember him,
Oh yeah,
he's the pride of Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, man. So I know all about the Panthers. My favorite game with them was when they played the Patriots in 2003. Man, that was just a insane game. But yeah, it was awesome.
yeah. They've had, oh man, they always tend to have the problem with the kickers. I remember in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, they scored a touchdown, tie the game, and then John Casey just had a very uncharacteristic bad kickoff as a penalty, and then the Patriots came down and kicked the game-winning field goal. The Super Bowl that Cam Newton played in, kind of same thing with kickers.
Gosh,
And then
that was terrible. Yeah.
Freaking lost yesterday. They missed an extra point. They missed an extra point, and then overtime he misses a 33-yard field goal, and then the Falcons come back and kick a field goal at the other end. So
yeah. You remember who beat Cam in that Super Bowl?
I do when he was on the Denver Broncos. Yeah,
Peyton Manning.
Yeah,
What can I say?
Yeah, Von Miller. Yeah, I remember very.
Yeah, exactly right. Nice.
Oh man.
Oh man.
Now, Chris. So what are you working on today? I know you have the podcast. We have your. I'm just going to pop your website up here as well, just so people can see that.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you're working on? What are some of the ways that we can learn from you?
Yeah, so right now, I have two businesses that I'm running. One is the blogging business, so that's the one that makes the majority of my income. Is I have a network a portfolio of blogs that generate revenue every single month, and I manage those. I got maybe 7, but I really only actively work on maybe 3 of them. The other ones are kind of just sitting around, just kind of collecting time, and a couple of them make money, and some don't. But it just depends on the ones you're working on. Typically, the ones that make the most money is the ones that you are working on actively. But regardless, I got that business. The second business I do is actually showing people how to do this stuff. I had a lot of people who would come up to me and say, man, how are you doing this? Or how are you doing that? So I remember answering the same questions over and over again. So I started creating videos on YouTube on how to do it. And from there, I made a course on it as well. So yeah, I'm one of those course guys who has it, but it's not really. I mean, it is a course, but I actually throw in actual coaching. So I do work with people who go through it. It's not one of those, hey, buy the course and you'll never hear from me again. So we do have that. And we've had some people go through that's had some decent success with it. We had one girl who came through and she started a site on learning English learning. And, she's getting around, I think, 40 to 50,000 people to her site per month now. She was making over $1,000 with her site within, I think, faster than even I did. It was around 4 to 6 months when she was already making $1,000 on her site per month. And she's doing really well with it, and I'm glad to say that I had a little bit of help with that. Helping people try to cut that learning curve as much as possible, keep them focused. I have like a private Slack group where people will come, hey Chris. I'm like, no, just write the content. Sometimes people just need them just to say, like, knock them on the head and be like, no, just do this. Stop wasting time on that. So that's the second business where I'm showing people how to do it. But so basically I'm either blogging or showing people how to blog at this moment. And that's kind of what I'm working on now. So the Blogger Revolution podcast, that's one of the things that I'm working on as well, trying to grow it so I can kind of diversify my traffic outside of Google and, just a whole bunch of everything. But never try to do everything all at once. This has all been like one thing after another over the course of 7.5 years, so that's kind of what I'm working on now.
All right. Sounds good. Well, Chris, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. And for everyone who watched or listened, thank you for letting us disrupt your everyday.
Thanks for listening to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. For more ways to listen, connect with us on social media. To be a guest or to partner with us, check out our link tree at Disrupt the Everyday. Join us next time for more ways to disrupt the everyday.